Phil Calvert is a former Canadian ambassador and a senior research fellow at the University of Victoria's Centre for Asia-Pacific Initiatives. We have reached him in Guatemala. Mr. Calvert, first of all, thanks for joining us. And many experts, including you, have predicted that China would retaliate against Canada. Are you convinced this apparent detention of Michael Kovrig in China is directly connected to Canada's arrest of Meng Wanzhou?
It looks pretty clear to me, Peter, that this is a Chinese response to her arrest. It fits in with China's playbook that they sometimes use, a kind of response to how they respond to these kinds of situations. And you'll recall that even a couple of few years ago, Kevin and Julia Garrett were arrested basically in response to the arrest in Canada of Su Bin, who was accused of stealing U.S. technology. So it seems to me that the coincidence is too unlikely. I think it's a way of China trying to exercise influence on the Meng case.
Okay, well, that was where I was going next. What message are the Chinese trying to send here to Canada?
Well, you know, I think it reflects China's approach to some of these issues. They are probably thinking that if they were to detain someone like Michael, who also is, as a diplomat on leave, that this would somehow give them leverage in obtaining Meng's release, and that Canada would walk away from this case, which is, of course, impossible for the Canadian government. We can't interfere. The Canadian government can't interfere in an independent judicial process.
So, and Canada's tried to make that clear to the Chinese that, look, this is the course of the rule of law. We are acting on an extradition order, and this process will play itself out. But it would seem if these two things are directly connected, the Chinese don't accept that. So how does this change the nature of the dispute and maybe the relationship between the Chinese and Canada for perhaps some time to come?
Well, I think, first of all, I think Canadian officials are going to be trying to make very clear to the Chinese counterparts that the government of Canada is not in any position to interfere in an independent judicial process. And they just have to make that clear. At the same time, they are going to be, as a top priority, looking to Michael Kovrig's health to determine where he is, make sure he has consular access, and to try to get him released. This is going to have, the Meng case is already having an impact on Canada-China relations, and China was threatening all sorts of consequences. I think we'll see a significant cooling off for the next while, certainly during the extradition case, and if Michael Kovrig isn't released, then even beyond that. What it might also do is the Liberal government itself might be inclined to recalibrate its approach to relations with China, in the sense that they came into power very much wanting to set a different tone from the Harper Conservatives, to have a more positive approach, to the point where at times they've been accused of being naive and not paying enough attention to security issues. This may actually have them rethink this and perhaps add a little more note of skepticism and realism to the relationship. And a level of healthy skepticism in dealing with China is also always a good thing to have.
Right. That may be the conversations flowing from all of this, but at this point, we've talked about, Canada will try to make it clear that there's a legal process underway for Meng here in Canada, and they can't interfere with that. They'll want to know about more about the health of Mr. Kovrig. Is there anything else Canada should do by way of response? Some people might suggest that, okay, if that's happened in China, is there something more Canada does here to retaliate against China? Where would that leave us?
I think it's very dangerous to start escalating this and start a process of continual retaliation. China has much better ability to coordinate systemically on its side to have a full-scale response commercially, in other ways. I suspect what's going to happen is we'll have some bilateral high-level visits canceled. We may have, I suspect the informal discussions on free trade will be put on hold for a while, and that things will simply go into a very, cool point for some time to come. But I wouldn't suggest that Canada escalate this even more or try to put more leverage on China, because you get into a game there that just makes it hard to find ultimately a positive outcome. And you have to be concerned about Michael Kovrig's health and well-being, and you don't want to do anything that's going to undermine that.
Right. Job one for the Canadian government would be to secure his release and make sure he's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Phil Calvert, good to get your perspective. Thanks for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you very much.